Hello everyone, I'm Jane Owen, Governor of the Cayman Islands, and I'm a part of the conversation.
Good morning, Governor. Nice to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you, and it's very good to be having this opportunity to talk to you and all of your listeners and viewers as well.
I appreciate it. And you've always been so open to the media, and this is something I really appreciate. Well, last year we had a conversation, and how have things been going since that time?
Well, it's certainly been quite busy, hasn't it? And I've now been on the island for about 2 years. I feel that there's a lot going on, a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities. I've really enjoyed getting around, meeting a great many people from all of our different varied communities and really understanding a bit more about what everybody is doing and trying to figure out how I, in my role as governor, can support that and serve the people.
Has there been any significant experience that you're really excited about that happened during that time?
Well, I guess the election was a pretty significant thing, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. So now it's very exciting to be working together with the new government. Every year in November, including last November, we also have the Joint Ministerial Council, which is the meeting in London with our government. So that was an opportunity with the last government to meet Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and of course our Minister for the Overseas Territories, Stephen Doughty, and to have a wider discussion, including with all of the other overseas territories, about how the relationship is going and how we're going to build it for the future. So that's been really significant. The other thing was, I guess, as we're looking forward to the next hurricane season, I do look back at last year's hurricane season, and particularly Hurricane Beryl, that I think came as a bit of a shock to all of us. So that was a really important learning experience for me, I guess, about how we manage these things and just reinforcing the importance of preparing for them properly.
Yes, and last year's hurricane season was really, it was surprising for us as well. But we hope to have another hurricane season. We're actually in it right now.
Yeah.
But the reports that may not be as rough as the last one. But as John Tibbs said, must be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say to all of your listeners, viewers and readers is that we always have these reports about how the season is going to be, but of course, as we know from past experience, you only need one bad one that is kind of out of character. So I think the important thing is for us all not to become complacent. And we saw actually in February last year, didn't we, which was completely outside the season when we had that very bad weather, and it actually caused an awful lot of destruction. So I think we just all need to be ready. We have the wonderful hazard management team led by Danny Coleman. We have our regiment, who are really a very, very important part of the response. But at the strategic level, I think we are very good in Cayman about joining up everybody so that we can respond effectively. And in fact, on Monday next week, we have a briefing of our executive, because of course all of the cabinet are in the executive if something happens. So we have a briefing ourselves to start to prepare to make sure we know exactly what we're doing as well.
And hurricane season is always something that's full of excitement. And what I've learned over the years by being in the Cayman is that we've learned from the real bad hurricane in 2004, and we have put so many things into place, even the weather radar systems. We are so up to date with the technology that helps us, and the housing and the properties are well managed, and the shelters are all in place. So I'm personally very happy that I am in the Cayman Islands. The infrastructure and the planning has been done well.
Yeah, but I think if I was in a property that regularly got flooded, I would be very, it's obviously a concern for a lot of people in the community. So I do recognise that. And I think it's important to remember that since 2004, there's been so much more, concrete and much needed development in the islands that in many ways we're not really tested for how it would be and how different it would be, which is why, again, we can't be complacent and we just need to be prepared. And I would remind everyone that we also need to be prepared for earthquakes and tsunami and general other things that might happen. So all of this preparation is very good because you never know when you might need it.
I agree. Well, we just finished another election season.
Yeah.
I think it's your first.
Yes, it is.
in
I
the
think every
Netherlands.
governor just has the pleasure, if I could put it that way, of one election.
Yes.
So this has been my one election.
And give me some feedback on your thoughts on the outcome and how it was handled.
Well, I was in pretty close touch with Wes Howell, the supervisor of elections, and he had a vast temporary team, as you know, of polling staff and election officials, and I do think they all did a fantastic job. I went round with Deputy Governor on the day of the elections to sort of see quite a few of the polling stations and to get a feel for it. I think the feedback we've had already so far from our election observers, which is partly the international group of observers, but also the domestic group of observers led by Miss Deborah Ebanks. The feedback we've had from them has all been really positive about how it was conducted on election day. It was very professional, very organised, very kind in terms of the outreach to the community and making sure everybody was properly served. I think there will be some points that are, well, there are some points that are already coming out about the wider strategic questions that we will need to look at around, for example, campaign financing and how we can make that perhaps a bit more transparent. And secondly, around election boundaries, which, as you know, we had a report on that. And I guess the new government will want to think about, because the population is changing all the time. So I think there were probably quite good reasons for not making a hasty response to some of the recommendations we had in the last boundary commission. But we will, I think, do another one. And maybe that will be the point at which we just need to do a couple of adjustments to make sure that the boundaries are effectively representing our people.
Yes. And regarding the boundaries and the reach out to the public, and I attended some of those sessions, but they weren't well attended. And I think it's something that we need to emphasize in our people, that this is something that's very important. Like you mentioned, people have moved around. They have changed their location where they live, and so it's important to have the boundaries actually reflecting what the voting public is at this point in time.
I mean, two things I'd say about that. I think that we found in many cases of outreach, it often doesn't work terribly well if you just have a big town hall meeting. And so I think we need to think much more cleverly about how we interact with our people so that people are able to give their views electronically or, maybe through, the media, like your platform. The second thing I would say, though, very clear, is that any changes in any of these areas will be for the elected parliamentary representatives to make a decision on. So I'm very clear about that. I, as governor, can support the information that we get together, but it's absolutely a devolved decision for our elected representatives to make.
And how do you feel about the outcome, and how are you getting along with the new government at this stage?
Well, I think everybody was always interested to see how the outcome was going to go. Again, in my role as governor, I don't have a role in that really. My position, as I've said before, is really to sit back after the election and wait and see which group or coalition comes along and says, we are the group that have got at least 10 signatures. So obviously I would have been happy to work with any group, but it has been a real delight and a great partnership really to begin working with the government of Premier Andre Ebanks and his deputy Gary Rutty and all of the members of the cabinet. There's quite a lot of experience in that cabinet. There's some new people, there's some business experience, so I think, and there's some experience in a lot of social issues. So it does represent, I think, and I hope people would feel this, a good cross-section of our society, and my role is to work with them to do what we can to serve all of our people.
Yes. And I see they've hit the ground running, and they're getting very busy. And I always say to my colleagues, give them some time, at least a month or two to get us feet wet, and then we can sort of, do our commenting and so on. So I believe in giving them time to hit the ground running and show what they can do.
Yes, I think it's always a challenge for any incoming government, isn't it? Because you're hit with really a raft of issues that everybody is clamouring and saying are priorities. And of course, it's true that most of them are. So it's certainly quite a challenging portfolio of issues. The key thing, I think, is to make sure that we are working effectively in partnership. I want to make sure that I'm working well with the government. A lot of the agenda is fully devolved to them, of course. It's really crucial that the government, any government, works well with the civil service. This is something that I know Honourable Premier and Deputy Governor Frans Manderson have been working on very closely together to make sure that throughout the civil service, all of our chief officers and indeed our SAGCs, to make sure that they are cognizant of how they can best work together. And I know that in Cayman over the years, we've also tried to see how we can reach out to other parts of society, the businesses in our society, very, very important group, but also civil society, the NGOs, non-governmental organisations. There's a lot of ways in which we can create effective partnerships to figure out how best we can take things forward. If you take an example of our young people, we're all agreed we want to do the best we possibly can for our young people in every way because they are the future. You can't have an effective policy unless you're working across government through sort of education and health and sport and all of those other things. But you also can't really have an effective policy unless you're figuring out how can you get the right internships, how can you support people who might be having difficulties in their lives, how can you create better opportunities, how can you guide people in the way of opportunities rather than taking the wrong track in life. So really you have to have everybody working together, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay. So just to add to what you're saying, so what do you see as the biggest challenge right now in the Cayman Islands? And right after, just tell me about the opportunities that may exist as well.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this. I think that it's very difficult to regard any particular area as, oh, this is a challenge and this is an opportunity over there, because every sort of bit of the policy environment that I look at, it seems to me that there are challenges and opportunities. So, you might look at education, and obviously there's things that we will want to do to improve education outcomes, for example. But on the other hand, you look at great opportunities that are there and which we can probably continue to develop to make sure that, for example, young people who are coming back from university have a really clear route into the workplace. So there's challenges and opportunities. If you look at what we need to do to further develop the islands, maybe with housing, maybe with tourism products. You've also got to balance that, obviously, with environmental considerations. Yes. I do believe it's possible to find a balanced way forward. But again, in all of these areas, you tend to see that there's opportunities and challenges, and that's what we've got to get right. And of course, for anything you want to do, you've got to pay for it. And I would say the budget is also a challenge and an opportunity. I mean, we've worked very hard to raise some more revenue, but as in every country in the world, the needs we have, I think I could absolutely say they exceed the money we've got. And Cayman is the same as every other country in the world in that respect, aren't they? So then you have to figure out, and this will be the job really for the government, won't it, to figure out what are the priorities.
Yeah. Yes, it's so important. We are closely aligned to the US.
Yes.
We've just had an election recently, and President Trump is in charge. There are many things that have been happening, and of course the tariffs that have been rolled out across the globe. Do you see those changes in the immigration and tariffs affecting the Cayman Islands in any way? And what are your thoughts on that? How it can impact the Cayman Islands?
Yeah, I think it's certainly something we need to keep a close eye on. There's no doubt that in the short term, the tariffs have affected the cost of living here. I mean, I think they've affected the cost of living in most countries, actually. So it certainly is a kind of brave new world out there that we're all dealing with. I think it is helpful to have the backstop, the support of the United Kingdom in this, because obviously the UK and the US have I think they do still have a pretty special relationship, yes. And they have been working on how to manage this. So we will continue to watch very carefully what is the impact of tariffs. We were at some point in the last couple of months worried what might happen with things like shipping, but having done quite a bit of work on that, including through the United Kingdom, it's now become apparent to me that for ships leaving the US, if they are traveling within, I think it's 2,000 miles, which covers the whole Caribbean basically, there will not be additional duties on shipping. So that was a good example of something that we thought might have been quite a big challenge, but we've been able to manage it. I know that colleagues in the financial services sector will also be looking very closely at what transpires in terms of US regulation. But at the moment, I have not seen any negative impact in that sphere. But obviously, we will look closely at that as well. That's another devolved area of business, like the rest of the economy.
I've seen some balancing taking place where we can call it rolling back or adjustments with the president, and that seemed to have given some comfort to the markets, who seem to have settled down for a while, because before it was, really very nervous for some of the investors. So I believe that as we go forward, we might see things improve, and that's my optimistic way of looking at things. As you mentioned, as you mentioned, I think that things that we'll have to keep an eye on what's happening, and there's experience that show that the shipping has been sorted out, and I believe that may continue. Final question. And I always like to end on a positive note. I personally have received good service from the civil service, and as the head of the civil service, and if anyone was to ask you, how is the unit working, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I'm very impressed with the way in which Deputy Governor Frans Manderson leads the civil service. And you've got people there like Miss Gloria McPhail-Nixon, who is the head of the portfolio of the civil service. You've got Financial Secretary Ken Jefferson. You've got a whole range of really top-class chief officers across the service. And I see every day, day in, day out, how they lead a service that is really committed and professional. I quite often talk to DG about the values that he instills in the civil service, which is passion, integrity, and professionalism. So, I think those are three extremely important values to have. And if you look at beneath that, what the civil service is trying to make sure it delivers, there are, I think, 6 things. So, and they all resonate with all of us, I think. So you've got customer service. If you're a customer, how does it feel? And they do test with customer feedback, and they have a really strong feedback across the civil service. They've obviously got leadership, that's important anywhere. Talent development is another one, and this, I think, links very much to a lot of the commentary we've been seeing about how we can support our young people in talent development in both the public and the private sectors. So we are working really, really hard, and I've seen the civil service learning offerings that they've got, and I think it's really excellent. Communication is another one. So whatever we're doing, it doesn't really work unless people know what we're doing and kind of understand what we're doing. So I think we have got a really good comms team. They're always happy to get feedback, and I know this is something that's very important to Honourable Premier as well, that we are collectively communicating what we're up to. So that's really important. You've also got governance, and then you've got accountability. So this is a kind of new target that Deputy Governor brought in 2 or 3 years ago, and it's about everybody in the civil service when they're doing their job is to think whatever level you're at, you need to be accountable for what you're doing. So taking all of that together and figuring out how the civil service can best work with the elected government, but also reaching out across the private sector or civil society or whoever it is to make sure that they're working as effectively as possible throughout the community is the way forward. We are very lucky in Cayman. I constantly get visitors who come from the UK or elsewhere who will say, this is amazing. I've had visitors come to our prison, which is not great in terms of the building, but whenever we have visitors coming to our prison, they say they are really impressed with what Danny Greaves does, the director of the prison, to lead that institution. Last week we had some people from the British Defence Establishment, the Joint Forces Headquarters, JFHQ. They were here to talk about hurricane preparedness, brings us back to hurricanes. They were so impressed with what is going on in Cayman and how we've got like 20 different departments all working together in order to prepare and plan our response. And this is a very familiar mantra, I have to say. Everybody who comes, we should cherish this because, and it's the same with the police, by the way, and police commissioner, people do feel we have a very high degree of capacity and capability in our public service.
And on that note, before I ask you for your final words, I emphasize a lot in my writings and my news production on the importance of education. And I've noticed that the civil service, a lot of its staff have graduated with degrees, and I'm so proud of that.
Yes, I think that's right, and that is good. I mean, I don't think degrees are everything. That's probably a weird thing for a governor to say, but I do really celebrate people who do well in their career, even if they haven't got a degree. And maybe this is part of our solution for the future of education. I just spent 5 years in Switzerland, where literally about less than a third of people go through an academic university education. And, you know, you look at the head of any massive Swiss corporation, you will find a lot of them didn't have a degree. So I'm not trying to put people off getting a degree, by the way. Please go out there and get your degrees. And we do need to make sure that you have a good path to an excellent career afterwards. But I think there are also some great opportunities on the vocational side.
Any final words?
Well, I guess I didn't mention security, just mentioning briefly police commissioner there. And when I was talking about opportunities and challenges, and we talked a bit about hurricane preparedness, haven't we? I think security generally, which is one of my responsibilities under the Constitution, is another area where we just should not be complacent. We do have challenges, you know, we have challenges in our community. We have a lot of challenges that are kind of either coming over the air or coming over the water towards our islands. So, you know, illicit import, whether it's drugs or just as worrying, firearms that often go with drugs and organised crime. And so that is something that we need to continue to be aware of. We have not greatly expanded our police, the numbers of police over the last 20 years. We have not greatly expanded them at all, not very much. And so one of my objectives, and one of the things I'm talking to our government about, is how we can have a sensible, gradual expansion so that we can make sure we've got the right people in our communities, but also we've got the right people doing our analysis and forensics and detection and everything else, and particularly looking at the marine environment through our Coast Guard. Quite a lot of investment needed in those areas, I think, because if you want to keep Cayman as a great place for us all to live in and a great place for visitors and business people to come to, then we have to keep it safe. So that is my other message, is don't forget security in all of this.
Governor, Thank you very much for your time and your wise words, and entertaining me and educating me as well, and the public. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody. Great to talk to you all.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Danny and John. Welcome again to Cayman Conversations.
Always good to be here, Ralph. Always good.
Good afternoon, Ralph. Always a pleasure.
Okay. Want to talk about a season that I know it has to happen, but I'd love to be prepared for it. And Danny, tell us, how are your preparations coming on for hurricane season this year?
Thank you, Ralph. I mean, I think one of the things just to bear in mind that hazard management obviously is an all-hazard approach. So we've had enough issues already this year in regards to sort of like earthquake threats and other things, some big fires and so forth that we've already been dealing with. So as far as hurricane goes, of course, I think we've been doing the hurricane blueprint for some time now across the Cayman Islands. And I think obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes here at Hazard Management. We've been doing a lot of training. Early on this year, we trained 144 people on an exercise called Event Horizon. And again, that was collaboration with Jamaica Defence Force. It was also Cayman Islands Regiment, Antigua and Caicos, and Bahamas. So again, talking about that regional capability, we've always got to focus on obviously what we're doing here locally, but also what kind of regional support do we have in the event of a large-scale incident. We also last week we were doing some presentations in Miami on Overseas Territory Disaster Management Conference. So talking about some of the topics that Cayman led on with things like the rapid response teams, how do we support each other in the region, but also things like some of the technologies we have here nowadays in the Cayman Islands. A lot of the work we're doing at Hazard Management with AI, for example, and situational awareness to make sure that the decisions we make are very much evidence-based decisions. And another presentation, again, we did on was unsolicited items. So the donations that come in, after a big event that aren't wanted or needed, obviously can cause massive issues for supply chains and so forth. So there's a lot of those kind of things going on. We've also got a meeting next week with, we've got the JFHQ team coming in from the UK, which is part of the Ministry of Defence. And again, how do we work with them to make sure we get the international support we may need if by chance we were impacted? So some work being going. Another one we did earlier on this year was mass rescues operations, more focus on cruise ships. But again, a cruise ship could be important when we have a hurricane coming too. And one of the exercises we did last year was very much focused on two simultaneous events, a cruise ship getting caught in port whilst there's a hurricane coming. So again, that's a bit about the international and regional response. There are a lot of things happening here at Hazard Management in regards to getting our systems ready. All our infrastructure gets checked on a regular basis. So that's things like the laptops, the sat phones, all the communication equipment, the radio usage. We're doing a lot of trainings right now with radio usage, and that's for our own teams, but also the National Emergency Operations Centre teams and the CERT teams, our Community Emergency Response teams. We'll be doing briefings very soon with the executive, which is the co-chaired by the governor and the premier and has all the cabinet ministers in there, as well as the leader of the opposition, deputy and the commissioner of police and so forth, attorney general and myself. But we'll be doing training next month on all levels. So the executive, as I mentioned, strategic coordination, as well as the National Emergency Operations Centre. And again, that is a full week exercise with those different groups, making sure that every level of our response is ready to go. And of course, our own internal, making sure all our team are very much aware. We have a few new team members this year. So making sure we're all aware of exactly what our responsibilities are. Once John and that National Weather Service tell us there's a storm coming, we're ready to go. And I think, again, a lot of it is also about working with the public, making sure that the public are ready to go. We've got this thing, what we call this year is cultural readiness. We want to make sure everyone's ready for any eventuality. And so we've spent the last 5 weeks and the next 2 weeks, so 7 weeks in total, at all the DIY shops, so the hardware shops. We'll be at the supermarkets. And that, again, is an opportunity for the public to come and talk to us directly and ask us, how do I prepare this house? My house has these vulnerabilities. It's, we can help you with elevation and so forth. So let's really think about what that threat and that hazard looks for each individual member of our community. And that's kind of what we do at Hazard Management, making sure that everyone in the Cayman Islands is ready to go.
I always look at past experiences, and whenever we don't have a hurricane, I said, you know what, we got a second chance or a third chance
to fix what we didn't fix that time.
Yeah.
So, we always can find something else to fix. Mr.
So I agree. Can I just very quickly come in before
Yes.
John comes in? I agree with you 100%. I think, we're always trying to better our response capabilities and make sure that we are cutting edge of any response. So every incident we have, no matter how big or small, we always do a very comprehensive debrief on it and make sure we're learning from those lessons. It doesn't just get stuck in a report on someone's desk. It's actioned, and we make sure that everyone involved is actioning their own action points to make sure we're all, good to go and again, continuously improving our response. Sorry, John, I'm not stealing your limelight.
Well, thank you. John, unfortunately, I don't remember you before June 1st, and that's not a good thing.
I do, John, I do.
I'm hurt.
I should be thinking about you all the time, but you're the expert on letting us know what to look forward to this year. And so could you give us some idea of what we can expect for your hurricane season projections?
Well, the Weather Service is not just weather, but we'll get into some of that afterwards. But
Yes.
so the experts that are putting together the prediction for the year have taken a look out there at the observed conditions, and they're looking for some particular aspects that are associated with a certain level of activity within the hurricanes, within the Atlantic Basin. So there are two main ones. One is the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic Basin leading up to the hurricane season. And a little bit different than last year. Last year we had a record sea surface temperatures leading up to the hurricane season. So last year was looking like it was going to be very active. This year is a step down from that, actually, because the sea surface temperatures are actually a bit colder than normal. Okay, so no record heat out there in the Atlantic Basin at this particular point. The second condition that they look at is the condition of what they define as the El Nino La Nina cycle. What this is the sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific Ocean. And I know that you look at it and you go, well, that's far away. How can that possibly affect us? The El Nino La Nina cycle, the impacts of it is very far-reaching, and it has always been there. It's just that scientists have finally figured it out and kind of know what it's about now. So the El Nino La Nina cycle has three phases. Okay, phase one is the El Nino. The El Nino means the eastern Pacific Ocean sea surface temperatures are warmer than normal. Okay, then there's a neutral phase, and that says temperatures are normal. Okay, and then the third phase is actually when they're colder than normal. That's called a La Nina. Okay, generally speaking, a La Nina is the bad one for the Atlantic Basin, and the El Nino is the more favorable one. Doesn't mean that you're going to have a dead season or anything like that. Either way, last year we had a La Nina, so hence the reason for the increased activity last year. This year we're into the neutral phase, so improved conditions on both the sea surface temperatures and the El Nino La Nina cycle, as it were. Both of those have switched in our favor. In terms of the predictions now, the predictions are going to vary from a number of different sources, because there are other atmospheric conditions that they correlate with active seasons, as it were. But for the main two are these two, and because of that, NOAA has predicted that we'll have between 13 to 19 named storms 6 to 10 hurricanes and 3 to 5 major hurricanes. Now, if you're looking at long-term history, that is an above-average season. Okay. However, I would say that when we got to April and May of last year, going into last year's season, the predictions were much higher than this. They were still a click higher than these predictions. So even though we're still above average, we're actually a bit improved over last year. All right, and last year obviously was quite active. National Weather Service responded with I think it's 5 storms. 2 are defined as direct hits. Beryl and Eduardo, I think it was something like that.
Raphael was probably one of them.
Raphael, late in the season, as it were. And by the way, since you hurt my feelings, I'll let you know that we also had that nasty nor'wester at the start of the year. So if you only come and look for me around the hurricane season time, you would have missed the nor'wester. All right. So the other thing is that I know you're going to talk a little bit about development and stuff like that, but the Weather Service is pushing towards a 24-hour service. And when we get that 24-hour service, we're going to get more involved with hazards management with regards to their earthquakes and tsunami monitoring and what have you. So things are going to be doing some changing, as it were.
So just to clarify, we're going to have an above average
Above
season.
average, yes.
Okay, but it's not as average as last year.
It's not as big and heavy as it was last year.
Okay. Now we'll come back to that and whether we should be relaxing or taking it easy and so on. But
Never relax this time of year, Ralph. You know
okay,
that.
maybe you can answer now. Should we relax? Let our hair down, relax our guard?
Ralph, it only takes one. It only takes one. Just as a reminder for people, the year we had not us, but when Florida had Hurricane Andrew, was an inactive year. Okay? And you asked them about how inactive a year that was. Okay? Because Andrew went through there and just wiped the place out, as it were. You know, and if you ask anybody from Florida, Andrews is the standard. You know, like ours is Hurricane Ivan, theirs is Andrew. And it came in an inactive year.
I think that's it, Ralph. I think, you know, it's funny. I mean, whilst we obviously look at the forecast and predictions and so forth, I pay a little bit of mind to it. It doesn't change any of our preparedness or response capabilities. It's always going to be across the board, no matter what the season looks like. Because again, as John says, it only takes one storm. But even the damage we saw from a nor'wester last year, it only takes one system, let alone a storm itself. And Tropical Storm Grace, which again caused quite significant destruction in places, was just a tropical storm. So it's making sure we're ready for any eventuality, and that pre-season planning is so important for everyone to do, because otherwise, you know, you can really get caught off guard.
Yes, it's like wearing a seatbelt in your car. You should always wear
Exactly.
it, because you never know when you're gonna.
Proactive, preemptive, whatever you want to call it, but just do it.
Okay, great. All right, Dan. As you can see, my favorite photo is hurricane shelters. But I'm always asking about them. Are the staff trained and ready to go?
Yeah, we're doing some really good training this year. Again, you know, we've always got a moving target. We all know that the population in Cayman has grown considerably over the last few years. So that target of how many people we can shelter is always moving. Every time we get another shelter on board, and we start celebrating that we've got another shelter on board, we have to, you know, again, look at the population size. Like, hold on a second, we've got another X amount. So we currently have about 9,838 places in shelters. And again, this is based on best practice. Now, of course, we know fine well, if there was a significant Category 5 storm, a lot of the private buildings would open their doors up to people, as in their own staff members and the families. but also, we'd have to be quite for life-saving purposes. That would be the priority, and perhaps people wouldn't get the 15 square foot that they would be quite, accounted for in this account. So it's one of those things that, yes, we're always trying to bring more shelters on. We have brought 2 new shelters on this year. I say 2 more. We've got the Bontown Church of God coming on this year, as well as expansions in some of the other shelters. So the capacity is better this year than it was last year. But again, I have no doubt the population's grown as well. So it's as I say, a forever moving target. We do have training coming up. We have training on the 7th and 8th of June. And we've done a big call out for shelter managers, both on our social medias and in government. And again, that's the same training each day. So we're just offering it twice because, of course, we want to make sure we're accessible for religious purposes. But we've had a really good uptake on that. I think the last time I checked yesterday was 130 people signed up, which again is a really exciting number. And that's, any shelter managers, but also part of the team, child protection officers, police are part of that team. We've got regiment part of that team. EMCs, the emergency medical centres. We've got a really good team from HSA as well as part of that team. So each shelter team consists of a number of different specialties, but depending on the size of the shelter, obviously will depend on the number of people there as far as that team goes. But it is really exciting. Again, we're going to roll that training out next week, a week and a half's time. And as I say, it's quite interactive. It's not, it's talking about shelter rules, but also how do you register people? How do you ensure that no one's, bad behaviour is dealt with in a way? And we're also doing a lot of work this year to ensure our shelters are, we're thinking about things like diversity and inclusion, making sure that everything we do is inclusive. So if people have special needs, for example, or accessibility requirements, or it might be the elderly, people might need sensory quiet rooms. We've obviously got all that in place as well. We're working very closely with Disability Council and the Elder Persons Council to make sure that we're doing our bit to make sure the shelters are, again, fit for purpose for everyone in the Cayman Islands.
Okay. The next topic I would like to discuss is about the unofficial weather forecasters. Of course, we know that the social media platforms have removed a lot of checks and balances. So a lot more stuff is being posted up there. I'm seeing forecasts for tropical storms coming to the region. John, how can we deal with these unofficial weather forecasters that exist?
Public education, I guess, is probably your best weapon. Ultimately, there are the worst part about this basically is that some of these guys have PhDs and all this kind of stuff. Okay. So some of them are quite highly educated and stuff like that. But, back in December and January, National Weather Service was looking for bringing on board a fully qualified weather forecaster. And when we kind of reached out internationally to look for them, the preference for me would have been someone from the Caribbean or from the southern United States or something like that. The reason for it is that you can have all the education in the world. However, if you don't have forecasting experience in the tropics, all right, there are problems. There are problems. Forecasting for the mid latitudes and forecasting for the tropics are totally different. But there's a lot of people out there now that are coming up with YouTube channels and everything like that. And now everybody is an expert. And there are a couple of things to note. None of them are qualified to issue any warnings for the Cayman Islands. The only agencies to issue those kind of warnings lie in this interview here between National Weather Service and Hazards Management, as it were. Okay? And the other part of it too is that, and this is what frustrates me a little bit, and that is some of the standards are different. So when Cayman says we're going to have bad weather and you don't get it, we hear all kind of problem with it. But when those foreigners say that you're going to have bad weather and it doesn't come, nothing is said. Okay, the different standard altogether. That being said, my boys, they don't have a problem standing up and having their reputation as it is. Everybody knows how good these guys are.
And your girl Kerry.
And my girl Kerry.
Shout out Kerry, girl power.
Kerry
Of course,
and
of course.
Desiree. Let's put it that we now have
Yes.
two female forecasters. So yeah, and nothing much you can really do about it because the general public are going to gravitate wherever they want to gravitate. The National Weather Service has to continue doing what it's doing. That being said, we're also looking to, and we're working with the comms team in particular on improving our warning system and presenting the information in a way that the public might be more receptive to, shall we say. All right. And that's pretty much all you can do.
And what I can just add before I ask Daniel to just comment is that before we started this interview, you were talking about giving access or sharing information with me to place on my website, which can just demonstrate the availability and the increased levels of technology that the National Weather Service is actually using. Some may argue, okay, they're not up to date yet, but what we are seeing now is that hazard management and the National Weather Service have upgraded their facilities and the technology to bring us right on par with the entire world.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk. I think again, we show a lot of people around our facility, both from the UK, so defence. Some people in the field that have been in the field for many, many years, and also regional counterparts. And again, they're always very impressed to see what kind of technology we have here at Hazard Management. I think some of the maps that have been developed. We do a lot of elevation maps. We have IoT flood sensors, which again we're rolling out across the 3 islands, and again that can monitor flooding way below before you can visually see it. Again, it's just that we've got two in the field right now. We're hoping to get them all around the islands. Again, as far as technology goes, that is really cutting edge technology. A lot of the databases we're using, a lot of the sources we're using to make sure that our decisions are evidence based as opposed to pie in the sky ideas is really very very well thought out. And again, I think one of the things I always say we're lucky about when I look back at Hurricane Ivan, yes, no one enjoyed Hurricane Ivan. It was a real, very, very tricky for a lot of people. But it also, in comparison to the region, it also made us the political and the financial priority investing in a department solely focused on hazard management 20 plus years ago. It means that we obviously, compared to a lot of our sisters and brothers in the region who haven't been impacted, that is definitely a very positive benefit that we've got from Ivan, in that we're many, many years ahead because the political will and the finances to put towards the department was there because we got hit a lot earlier than others did. So there's always a pros, obviously the silver lining to some of these events. But I do think some of the stuff we're doing here at Hazard Management now, in particular, sort of the mitigation specialist, now the acting deputy of preparedness, Mark Codling. Again, he's got a PhD, or he's doing a PhD in artificial intelligence, which means that, of course, a lot of the stuff is very much, focused on AI and making sure we're doing our part. We did a PR campaign recently. It was all focused on AIs. This could happen in a hurricane. And again, just trying to make it a bit more modern, a bit more sort of proactive.
Ralph, in that kind of context, can I just add a few words here? Just to buoy a little bit on what Danny said. If you go back before Hurricane Ivan, there is no National Weather Service. There is no Hazards Management Cayman Islands. What has become the National Weather Service today was an aviation weather office, forecast office. Okay. And I remember going in with what was then the Hurricane Committee and listening to some of the high-end individuals in that organization, and they were all voluntary and all holding different hats for their main careers. Okay. And every one of them were begging, we need to form an organization like Hazards Management. And it really took a Hurricane Ivan to come here and whip us down to form that organization. And then, of course, the second part of the, if you want to get some presence from Hurricane Ivan, you got Hazards Management, you got a National Weather Service out of it. I'm sure there are other things that have happened and stuff like that. But I'd also like to big up something, and that's we are both within Cabinet Office of Government. Okay, National Weather Service has been in a number of ministries, and I'm not disrespecting anybody, but I'm going to tell you, I am extremely impressed with the ship that Cabinet Secretary Samuel Rose runs. He has been, first of all, he's locked me, National Weather Service and Hazards Management, together even tighter, as it were. Okay, and we're working together on many projects now. Mrs. Coleman added some things there, but we just put in a main forecast computer. We've got a weather modeling computer. We've got buoys coming, storm surge sensors coming. Okay, a lot of things are coming down the pipeline. A lot of it has to do with the Cabinet Office and the team that's there in terms of supporting these two agencies. So I'm extremely delighted, and I'm willing to go out on the boat to just say, big up that Cabinet Office for all that they do and they continue to do.
Okay. Okay. Well said.
Agree 100%.
How's the radar working?
Well, we got all kind of good news. The radar became perhaps the #1 priority dealing with the Weather Service. Not from this election, but from the last election. There was a massive task taken to put the Weather Service, weather radar, to where it needs to be. All right. It's now got a new maintenance contract. It's got some decent equipment in it and what have you. We've got some a brand new radar coming. I think it's late November, early December this year. That's the target date. Okay. We've made sure of various components within our radar building and what have you. Made sure about the technical support. We are still a bit lacking in that area. And in that context, I'll big up one of my staff members, Mr. Michael Carey. He is basically what I would define as the leading radar expert on the island, weather radar. There are other radars that might come out there and what have you, but he's the one that's been keeping the weather radar up and running. And he's the one that is, a lot has been invested in him. We need to just work on getting him some support. He can't run that ship all by himself for an outside man.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Well, I want to thank both of you for once again coming and spending some time with me. And in just wrapping up, I must say that I feel more comfortable today, that I'm fully prepared for this next hurricane season. Not because it may not be as I expect it to be, but if that one comes, I think I know where to get my information. And there's so much synergies with the different units that we're in a real strong position to deal with in disasters. Danny, any closing comments?
We're joined by the hip, John and I, for most of the year, but in particular 6 months a year. So I guess closing comments again. I really strongly encourage the public to be ready for whatever the season holds. It really is getting those odd can of beans or whatever that looks like to make sure that if by chance something hits in the next, several weeks, you don't have to go rushing to the supermarket. You've got a plan in place for your family where you're going to shelter. You know the elevation of your home. You know how to turn your water off. You know how to, put your shutters up. We have some really good guidance on that at www.caymanprepared.ky. And again, we're always happy to come out to schools, to service clubs, to churches. We do a lot of work again with the elderly population. How do we make sure that caretakers know, specific tailored presentations that we can do for the private sector as well? We do a lot of work with the private sector on things like business continuity. We've got training all week on business continuity, and again, making sure that all of our government plans are ready to go. It's not just the preparedness that we have to look at. How do we respond when a storm leaves us and we've got no electricity, or very little shelter, or no vehicles left? So there's a lot of work that's going into business continuity here at Hazard Management as well. My only last thing would just be to say that we have this national emergency notification system whereby you can get these alerts. So we strongly recommend people do download the NENS app. We are working towards the next phase. So we have, in any emergency, obviously there's a lot of social media, both through Hazard Management Gov.ky and also the Weather Service. But there are a lot of different platforms. We work very closely with all our media houses here in the Cayman Islands. But again, it's not just about radio, it's not just about TV, it's also about things like the notification app. So downloading those things. We're also working closely with Ofreg, so we can get an agreement with our providers here in regards to sending those texts out. And finally, our ultimate goal is a cellular broadcast, but that will take a bit of time. But in the meantime, the quick fix again is downloading the NENS app at nens.gov.ky, and we're here to help for any technical issues. We can help you download that app. And again, you get a notification, SMS, email, and the app itself. So it's a really good system. We've had a few technical issues with it, but we've ironed all those out since the tsunami exercise. And again, just really encourage the public to be ready for any eventuality this year.
Thanks, Danny. John, any final words?
Only takes one. Only takes one. Yeah. Yeah. Not much too much got to say. National Weather Service continue to move on, and we are still expecting some more staff members in here to build up our staffing levels so that we can start to operate 24 hours. And knock on wood, this is expected to be my last hurricane season that I am going to be without a building for the National Weather Service. Our headquarters has started, and they are hoping that it'll be finished sometime early next year. So by the time the next hurricane season after this one, we will be very comfortably in our new building, and expecting the sky's the limit with the staff. So pay attention, especially to the websites, National Weather Service and Hazards Management websites. And of course, National Weather Service also has the weather radio, 107.9 FM.
Okay. Well, thank you, Danny. Thank you, John, for coming in once again, Cayman Conversations. I want to invite you back again, maybe in 2 months from now. We get an update on what's happening for the hurricane season. Thanks for all your advice and encouragement and advice. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
We hope you enjoyed today's broadcast and invite you to join us next Sunday for more great interviews. Remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube pages. And also pick up copies of Caymanian Times newspaper at Foster's and Hurley supermarkets on Wednesday and Friday. To appear on Cayman Conversations podcasts, call me at 916-2000 or email Ralph at caymaniantimes.ky. Have a great evening and see you soon.